The first episode of House of the Dragon Season 2 continues right after the Season 1 finale, specifically the murder of Prince Lucerys Velaryon, nicknamed Luke, and his dragon Eryx, by Aemond and his larger dragon vhagar. Now that first blood has been drawn, any offers of peace in the Civil War have fallen on deaf ears. Lord Cregan Stark of Winterfell narrates to Prince Jacaerys Velaryon, also known as Jace, about the duty of the North as they survey the top of the wall, among other members of the Night's Watch. He explains a tradition by Torrhen Stark of men in Winterfell drawing stones from a bag to see who is sent to the wall to fortify it against death. Something so terrible that in the past Targaryen dragons dare not pass the boundaries of the wall. While he can't pledge many soldiers in support of Rhaenyra, he still sends 2,000 troops to the cause, greybeards who are old but experienced, in keeping with the oath he swore to her as Viserys' named heir. They receive a raven with news of Luke's murder. Rhaenys arrives at Dragonstone upon her dragon Melis after patrolling the gullet as part of the blockade. Daemon wants her to join him in killing Aemond, a son for a son. Daemon tries to command her to join, but she ignores it, as it is not Rhaenyra's order. She does explain to him that the Queen's absence is due to her not yet seeing evidence of Luke's passing. We cut to a scene where Rhaenyra looks upon the sea in sadness. Lord Corlys, after suffering an injury in Season 1, inspects the repairs to his ship in Driftmark. It will take about 2 weeks before it will be ready to sail. He thanks Alan for saving him from the watery depths, as Aemond and vhagar return to King's Landing. King Aegon searches for their newborn Prince Jaehaerys to take him to the small council. His wife Helaena meekly tries to prevent this, and says it is because she fears the rats. An omen of what comes later in the episode. Queen Alicent and Esser Criston Cole have intimate relations, though she says that they can't do this again. After seeing a nameless ratcatcher in the small council chamber, the High Towers discuss their forces. So far, they have the Lannisters, Baratheons, and Alltown. Letters to the north, the Vale, and Dragonstone have gone unanswered, while Aegon and Aemond want to use dragons to destroy the blockade and force Lord Tully of Riverrun to their side. Otto and Alicent advise patience and restraint. Either way, Aemond wants to establish a foothold in Harrenhal. Larry Strong meets Alicent in a hallway and says he has disposed of castle staff that are disloyal to their cause. Rhaenyra spots fishermen catching a dragon wing in their nets. She arrives with her dragon Syrax and rummages through the catch. She finds Luke's clothing and weeps. Aegon hears various petitions concerning sheep, salt, and weapons, with tithes and rising prices, impacting the common folk of King's Landing. Otto steps in where he can to sway the king's judgments, brewing tension between the Hand and the king. Alicent questions Otto in her chambers about whether their interests are aligned. Victory to her is having Rhaenyra bending the knee and Aegon sitting on the Iron Throne, though she feels that Otto undermines her on the small council. Otto reminds her that victory will require violence. Eric Cargyle, who is flipped on Aegon and acts as a Queensguard for Rhaenyra, searches various ships and finds the white worm Mysaria. She is interrogated by her former lover Daemon and admits to selling information to Otto, though she says the relationship was purely transactional. He also questions Eric's loyalties, but he tells Daemon that being a Kingsguard is nigh impossible when royalty fights each other. Rhaenyra returns and has an extremely short meeting at the war table. Daemon wants to fly to Harrenhal, but Rhaenyra remains largely silent and angry. All she wants is Aemond Targaryen dead. To this end, Daemon speaks with Mysaria again in her cell and gains information about her former network in King's Landing. Meanwhile, Alicent says a prayer to the fallen and includes Luke at the end. Daemon arrives in secret by boat to King's Landing, finding a city watchguard and a ratcatcher who knows his way throughout the castle. They are not named, though in the books they are called Blood and Cheese, so we'll use that for now. He hires them to assassinate Aemond Targaryen, though other targets are seemingly possible if he cannot be found. Aemond and Criston speak about using force instead or words to gain allies. Aemond says that his mother, Alicent, speaks with 2 tongues, and is a fool for still loving the enemy. Otto arrives and tells Aemond that his bloodlust and vengeance will be sated, but he needs to put a grip on his impulses. Blood and Cheese maneuver their way through the tunnels to the royal chambers. They are unable to find Aemond, so they search elsewhere. Blood thinks he is caught by chambermaid, but finds that Cheese has caught Helaena in the nursery with Jaehaerys and Jaehaera. They threaten her to tell them which one of the twins are a boy, and they work out the truth, decapitating Jaehaerys in cold blood. Helaena manages to run away with Jaehaera and rushes to Alicent's bedroom. Alicent awakens to hear the terrible news. House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 2 opens with chaos. The King's Guard runs through the streets searching for the murderers. Aegon smashes that kick-ass model Viserys spent his whole life building while shouting, "I declare war." Aemond snoops around and finds the open passageway leading to his chambers. Alicent worries about her daughter, but Otto, the clever marketer, sees this as an opportunity to draw more aid to their cause. Moments later, Aegon holds an awkward council, tossing his rage at anyone in sight. Luckily, Larys arrives with good news. "We found a guy and are 99.9% certain he's the killer unless, by some coincidence, he was one of two men carrying a child's head in a sack." "I trust in the mastery of your trade, Lord Larys," Otto says, which translates to, "You're free to enact Reservoir Dogs protocol and torture the bastard until you get the information you need. My Steelers wheel cassette is upstairs." Like Daemon, Aegon is ready to throw down. Hilariously, everyone disregards his tantrum, calm and collected. Otto delights in turning lemons into lemonade and suggests holding a sad funeral for the dead prince, hoping to use the sight of the child to turn the tide of the conflict. "Jaehaerys will do more for us now than 1,000 knights in battle," Otto says. Disregarding his king's apparent despair, Alicent knows her father speaks the truth, but even she appears reluctant to cross this line. Am I wrong to think Otto is the most interesting character on this show? He's the most adept at playing the game, and the only one looking at the bigger picture. His moves occasionally cause a stir, but he's more reactionary than proactive, opting to play the hand he's been dealt instead of making unnecessary moves. Otto understands that peace between the blacks and the greens is impossible. The logical move is to gain as much support as possible to prepare for the coming war. Fight now, weep later. We cut to the residents of King's Landing, once again, gathering to watch their overlords deal with personal issues. "Gee, I hope a dragon doesn't leap out and kill half our population again," someone says. The funeral procession goes as planned. Everyone weeps for the poor queens. Meanwhile, Larys prepares to torture his captive. He flips over a cloth, displaying a collection of barbaric tools. For the first time in TV film history, a prisoner spills his guts before his torture. "It was Daemon," he says, "and a rat catcher." Aegon arrives and beats the shit out of him. Back at Dragonstone, Rhaenyra hears the bad news and quickly deduces Daemon is behind the attack. The power couple go at it, unleashing gallons of pent-up aggression and finally saying what they've wanted to say, and it goes like this. Rhaenyra rightfully thinks Daemon is selfish. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. He's the type of wild card you'd want to have during battle. Unfortunately, no one knows what to do with him between the scuffles, and that's when he gets into trouble. Like Corals, Daemon seeks the throne more to vindicate himself than his wife. I assume he comes around at a certain point, but he's got some personal baggage to unload. Wisely, he performs House of the Dragon's version of sleeping on the couch and flies away on his massive beast. Another quick note. This season lacks a moral center. Viserys had flaws, but overall, he was a good man trying to keep his family together. Now, we're stuck with Rhaenyra, Alicent, Daemon, Otto, and their bratty children. Rhaenyra and Alicent are victims of circumstance, but they also made questionable choices that stirred the pot. The moral of the story, kids, is that if you're going to cheat on your husband and have more children, make sure you pick a man who looks like your husband. Back at King's Landing, Esser Criston continues his descent into utter darkness. I think he's the only man in history who slept with someone he shouldn't have, and was mad when she didn't call back. I get sacred oaths and whatnot, but come on, man. He evidently watches the Acolyte because he concocts a plan to send Eric, the Green Twin, to kill Rhaenyra disguised as his brother Eric, the Black Twin. At first, Green Twin is like, nah, it's against my programming. But then he's like, it's so dumb it might just work. There's also the prospect of triumph and glory. Plus, I'm pretty sure Cole would kill him if he said no. At a brothel, Aemond whines to a prostitute who reminds him that the kingdom's squabbles always impact small folk. Then we randomly jump to Hugh Hammer, the Thor-looking dude who approached Aegon and asked for more money for the blacksmiths in the last episode. Then we spend more time with Alan, the sailor who saved Corley's life. We also meet his brother Adam. Later, we see 10 men hanging along the city streets and learn they are, or were, all rat catchers slaughtered by King Aegon. A mother weeps at the sight of her son. I don't know where any of these subplots are going, but they do show how this conflict affects the ordinary citizens of King's Landing. Are we seeing the formation of a rebellion? Rhaenyra meets with the White Worm, the show's silliest character. After quite a bit of back and forth, Rhaenyra frees her, though I suspect she'll return and serve an essential function alongside the Queen in future episodes. Later, Otto loses his cool over Aegon's murder of the Ratcatchers. With your child's blood, we bought their approval. With your mother's tears, we made a bitter sacrifice. Otto says, and I'm not sure if he's talking about us, the viewers, or the citizens of King's Landing. At the start of the episode, I found my sympathies leaning toward Aegon. Now I'm back with Rhaenyra. Yes, I'm a sheep. I'm part of the problem. Aegon hates everything Otto stands for. At least I did something, he says. I will not be thought weak. I wish to spill blood, not ink. I wish to act. Esser Criston Cole has acted. Otto's reaction is hilarious. And what has Esser Criston Cole done, he says, dreading the answer. He has sent Esser Eric to slay Rhaenyra. Okay, so Eric is the green twin. Got it. It's time the bitch queen pays a price, Criston says. Fella, you gotta move on. At this point, he's literally just Cole. Otto lays in harder, losing his nerve with each passing second. He calms down long enough to mourn Viserys. Remember when our biggest worry was whether or not the king would lose a finger or two on Saturday? Aegon tires of Otto's insolence and relieves him of his command. I love Rhys Ifans' acting when he hears Aegon say, "Remove your badge." He knows he went too far and understands the ramifications of his outburst, not just on a personal level but for the kingdom. Without Otto, Aegon is free to follow his emotions. Now is an excellent time to sell your King's Landing property. Even worse, he appoints Criston Cole as his new hand. Damn it. Folks, here's a prime example of someone literally sleeping their way to the top. Has Cole ever done anything meaningful or worthwhile, aside from the Queen Ao, that deems him worthy of this position? The Iron Throne now consists of a pissed-off king mourning the loss of his son, a hand mourning the loss of his virtue, and a pair of queens mourning the loss of their minds. Times are a-chongin', kids. For the second time in as many seasons, Otto loses his job. And for the second time in as many episodes, we get an assassination attempt. This time, Eric sneaks around Dragonstone searching for Rhaenyra. He enters her room and draws his sword, but his brother arrives in time to prevent the attack. The two brothers fight, offering another example of how this silly conflict impacts the lives of good people. Eventually, their rage fest concludes with Eric dead. For a moment, I think the evil twin pulled a switch arrow and expected him to charge Rhaenyra. Instead, Eric does the one thing I don't expect, and falls on his sword after pronouncing his failure. I mean, he did save the queen. Did he not do his duty? On the plus side, he and his brother will quickly learn whose team was more virtuous. Back at King's Landing, Otto again bids farewell to his daughter, who instructs him to go to Highgarden to meet with the Tyrells. The young are peacocks, all shrieking in feathers, he says, but we will yet prevail and bring forth peace, I still believe it. I have sinned, Alicent suddenly blurts out. I do not wish to hear of it, he says. Thanks, Dad. She heads out to speak, or probably yell at Aegon, and finds the poor guy crying. I'm conflicted. I kinda like Aegon, but then I also think he's a little nuts. It could be worse. Emerty Joffrey fans? Anyways, Alicent leaves without saying a word, thanks Mom, and hooks up with Criston Cole. Good lord, these people are hornier than the cast of Euphoria. And that's it. That's the end of House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 2. Thanks for watching. House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 3 opens with two groups of boys, the Blackwoods and Brackens, getting into a scuffle over some border rocks. They exchange F-bombs and reveal their allegiances. The Brackens root for the Greens and call the Blackwoods babe killers, while the Blackwoods cheer for the Blacks. Tensions mount and swords are drawn. You wouldn't dare, the Blackwoods say. Smash cut to the same boys, now dead, lying amongst thousands of bodies next to a mill. The point? This dispute between the Blacks and the Greens is getting out of hand and crossing into small folk territory. To emphasize this idea, the Queen that never was explains to Rhaenyra how people use this conflict to satisfy their bloodlust. We teeter now at the point where none of it will matter, she says, as dirt covers Eric and Eric's corpses, and the desire to kill and burn takes hold, and reason is forgotten. Keep in mind that Rhaenys murdered at least a couple hundred innocent bystanders when she fled from King's Landing on her dragon last season. Nobody seems to care about that particular incident. For some reason, including the writers, Rhaenys urges Rhaenyra to speak with Alicent. Rhaenyra says, she doth not like me, in other words, no thanks. War is inevitable. At King's Landing, Sir Criston sits at his first council meeting as the Hand of the King. He takes strays from everyone, including Alicent, for his dumb, acolyte-ish attack on Rhaenyra. Now we must go to war, Alicent says. Yes, only now, after Criston sent an extra to kill Rhaenyra, is war suddenly inevitable, Alicent. Aemond and Aegon cheer on the windmill slaughter. Like audiences, they're happy to see something happen in this show. The council debates the next steps. Eventually, Criston offers to enlist the Brackens, subdue the Riverlands, and take Harrenhal without any dragons. I'm not taking any dragons because we don't have the budget. Or, I'm trying to keep a low profile. As a side, what exactly is Criston's motivation here? Is he trying to impress Alicent, or is he still pissed at Rhaenyra for their one-night stand 15 years ago? He has acquired more power than he ever imagined. Yet he continues to behave like a mopey teenager who just got dumped via text. You're telling me this man, this once noble knight of the realm, willingly starts a war to get back at his ex-girlfriend? Speaking of interesting characters, we spend more time with the White Worm, a weird-ass former brothel owner who apparently knows everything and everyone connected with the plot. She wants a place by Rhaenyra's side for almost trying to kind of save her life last week. Sure. Next, we get an extended sequence with Daemon as he invades Harrenhal without much opposition. He kicks open the doors to the dining room and finds Sir Simon Strong enjoying a meager feast with his boys, after discussing whether or not they poisoned his peas. Daemon joins them and explains the importance of this particular fortress. In short, it's huge. Unfortunately, said fortress looks like shit. We need money, Strong explains, and Daemon needs a place to garrison the men of the Riverlands after he converts them to his cause. If you watched the beginning of the episode, you'd know the Blackwoods and Brackens hate each other, Strong says. Why? Damien asks. That answer is lost in time, Strong replies, reiterating the point of this episode just in case you didn't catch it earlier. If you are successful, Strong continues, what then? Daemon stares him down. We march on King's Landing and take the throne. Okay then. The next day is haircut day. Criston shows off his new Lloyd Christmas locks to Alicent's bro, Sir Gawain Hightower. Have we met him before? I don't remember. At any rate, he doesn't like Criston or his hair, sneering at him the same way that snobby waiter sneered at Ferris Bueller. Alicent also acts a little salty toward this new iteration of Criston. Why? Didn't the last episode end with the pair rolling around in the sack? He asks for her blessing as he heads off to war. She reluctantly hands him a rag. She doesn't like his hair either. On Dragonstone, we get another scene with Rhaenyra's council, who implores her to fight. She asks for patience and more men. I guess Daemon flew off last week not out of anger, but to attain more support. Everyone, she says, this is gonna take a long time. The board tries to ship her away, for her own protection, a deceit she sniffs out without much effort. Later, Rhaenyra sends Rhaena and a few small dragons on a mission to remind Lady Jane of her pledge. Rhaena reluctantly bids her sister Baela adieu and ships off. At King's Landing, Aegon readies himself for battle but experiences a change of heart after speaking with Larys Strong. The Master of Whispers tells him that some people claim he was egged on to battle so Alicent could lead in his absence. Naturally, he cancels his flight plans and hangs with his boys at a local tavern and later a brothel. We then get a scene with an unnamed man claiming to be the son of Balon the Brave and the bastard brother to Daemon and Viserys, perusing the World Wide Web. Many believe this is Ulf the White, a character who plays a major role in the upcoming war. I'm avoiding spoilers, so that's all I know. Coincidentally, Aegon arrives, and we spend the next few minutes following him around the small folk, where we see much drinking, a full-on blowjob, and Aemond once again chilling with his prostitute mistress. Aegon mocks his bro for loving a prostitute, and lets him know he will indeed be the next man. Another reason for Aemond to dislike his king if there wasn't enough reason. We then meet up with Criston Cole and Alicent's brother. After exchanging casual FUs, Criston spots Baela's dragon soaring overhead. We're exposed, he says before making like bull and shouting. Cue a cool shot of Baela diving at the men, only narrowly missing them as they flee into the forest. You're a good dude, Sir Gawain tells Criston, best friends for life. Baela alerts Rhaenyra of Criston's location at another council at Dragonstone. Once again, Rhaenyra's council instructs her to fight. Once again, Rhaenyra dismisses the council without a clear-cut plan. Once again, Rhaenys smirks like she knows something. Next, we get an odd scene with Daemon at Harrenhal, where young Rhaenyra visits him in a nightmare. I'm always cleaning up your messes, she says, stitching Jaehaerys' head back to his body. He awakens to find himself standing before a weirwood tree, where a woman in black gives him some good news. You will die here. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra asks the White Worm to help her get to Alicent at King's Landing, after a quick boat ride and a crafty disguise. Rhaenyra kneels next to Alicent at that table with all the candles. Here we go. The moment we've all been waiting for. Alicent v. Rhaenyra. Anything could happen. Rhaenyra could kill her friend. Alicent could sound the alarm, or they could embrace and put this whole mess behind them. The conversation mostly consists of Rhaenyra saying she deserves the throne, and Alicent saying she deserves the throne. I suppose Rhaenyra will feel more justified in her quest now that she learned what her father actually said to Alicent on his deathbed, but it's too late to call back the wolves. War is inevitable. The funniest bit about all this is that thousands of people will die because Alicent didn't realize there was more than one Aegon. Alicent flees the scene, shockingly, without sounding the alarm. These people happily kill small folk but will absolutely under no circumstances murder each other. Rhaenyra, looking quite silly in that nun getup, appears shocked. Hans Zimmer's Dune plays over the soundtrack, and the episode ends like we witnessed a big, dramatic, historic TV moment. In Episode 4 of House of the Dragon Season 2, things are not going all that great for Daemon in Harrenhal. He continues to experience horrifying visions as he stays in the cursed castle. At the start of the episode, he sees a young Rhaenyra again, this time taunting him with her crown. He cuts off her head before waking up from the vision with blood on his hands. Later in the episode, he sees his late second wife, Laena, serving drinks to the council, as well as a version of himself wearing Aemond's eye patch. Daemon's also not exactly turning the tide of the war, as he thought he could by taking Harrenhal. The crumbling castle has no army, and Lord Tully is incapacitated, unable to raise the banners of the houses in the Riverlands. A conversation with Tully's young grandson doesn't do Daemon much good either, so he eventually summons Willem Blackwood, who has grown up since we saw him in Season 1. This Harrenhal storyline is also giving us perhaps the best new character of Season 2 in Alys Rivers. Alys spends much of her time in this episode explaining to Daemon that he's just slowly losing himself within the haunted walls. While Daemon tries to get things together in the Riverlands, Sir Criston Cole has been doing a lot of work in the Crown Lands on his way to Harrenhal. He has been victorious in multiple battles and essentially tripled his army as they march through Westeros. For better and for worse, this is Rhaenys episode. Her first time appearing in A Dance of Dragons sees her meeting Alan of Hull face to face, and then confronting her husband about it. This exchange all but confirms that Alan and his brother Adam are the secret sons of Corlys. It also sees Rhaenys tell her husband that Alan deserves to be given a more prominent position than he has, especially since he saved Corlys' life. Rhaenys is also acting as the voice of reason in Rhaenyra's small council until the Queen returns from her secret trip to King's Landing. There's a lot done throughout the first 45 minutes of this episode to show just how important Rhaenys is to not only the Rhaenyra, but to the entire realm. She's often called the Queen that never was. And that leadership is on full display here. Speaking of queens, Alicent is taking a potion to try and prevent pregnancy, just weeks after her husband's death. It would not be good for her to be seen carrying a child. Aegon's small council meeting shows just how unprepared he is for the throne. Everyone is operating around him and making decisions without asking him, especially Aemond. The king's brother is working closely with Cole on a battle plan, and they never bothered talking to Aegon about any of it. Aemond is clearly an expert tactician, and he doesn't bother hiding it. When Aegon finally starts to break, Alicent gives it to him straight. She tells him that he should do nothing and let the smarter, more confident men around him make the decisions they know how to make. Alicent knows that war is inevitable and knows that she will back her children no matter what. But she is also becoming more aware with each passing day that the Iron Throne should have been Rhaenyra's. Instead of marching on to Harrenhal, Criston makes off for Rook's Rest. It's a much smaller castle, but it's important to Rhaenyra's forces, as it is one of the only strongholds in the area controlled by one of her council members. Taking that could hurt her chances of gaining any momentum on the mainland. It's also, as we'll eventually learn, a trap to take out one of Rhaenyra's dragons. With Rhaenyra now confident, there will be no peace between the two sides. She agrees to send a dragon to Rook's Rest to stop Cole's army. While she initially volunteers, Rhaenys convinces the queen to let her go instead, as Rhaenys leaves for battle. Rhaenyra explains to Jace why she chose not to send him, even though he also volunteered. She tells him the story of Aegon the Conqueror's vision, the Song of Ice and Fire, just as Viserys had shared it with her. When Rhaenys comes to attack Cole's forces at Rook's Rest, he sounds a horn. This signals Aemond, who has been waiting in the forest with vhagar, the massive dragon covered in brush and moss as to not be seen from the skies. Aegon shows up to the battle unexpectedly, and Aemond allows him to try his hand before releasing his monstrous dragon. Rhaenys and Meleys are more opponent than Aegon and Sunfire are ready for, quickly overpowering the young king. That's when Aemond and vhagar show up, proving their might. Aegon and Sunfire are downed in the battle, and Aemond ultimately kills Rhaenys and her beloved dragon, dropping them onto Rook's Rest from the sky. In the final moments of the episode, Cole finds the fallen Sunfire, with Aemond standing in front of the beast with his sword drawn. He puts the sword away, and Cole sees Aegon laying beside the dragon, burnt and potentially dead. As Rhaenyra and Corlys mourn the loss of Rhaenys, the Greens are out celebrating the fall of Meleys over at King's Landing. They parade Meleys' head throughout the city, declaring it was Aegon who slayed her. But while Criston seems proud of the battle's results, Wayne is not convinced. He calls it a strange victory, considering Aegon's near-death experience, noting, if it was a victory at all, the small folk seem to have the opposite reaction than Criston was hoping for. They call their parade an abomination, while others believe what they're doing is a bad omen. Aegon's body is brought inside the castle, and Alicent goes to see him, getting confirmation that he's alive for now. His skin is severely charred and his bones are broken. The maesters remove his armor and begin treating him as Alicent sees how bad a shape he's in. She's fearful that he's going to die, and the maesters tell her that the next few hours are critical for his survival. Aemond walks in and looks at his brother, declaring that someone will need to rule in his place. Over at Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's council tries to decide their next move. Someone suggests that they strike King's Landing now while vhagar is likely tired and Aegon could be dead. But when Rhaenyra volunteers to go, her council turns her down. We see in this episode just how lost Rhaenyra is in war. She was never trained for this, and she doesn't know what her place is. She's tired of waiting at Dragonstone for something to happen, but she also is being told she can't leave. During a conversation with Mysaria, Rhaenyra opens up about her struggle, and Rhaenyra advises her, there is more than one way to fight a war. She tells Rhaenyra to allow others to do things for her that she can't do herself. Taking this guidance, Rhaenyra sends Alinda off on a mission. Jacaerys is equally as restless in Dragonstone and decides to take matters into his own hands. He wants to go speak with the Freys at the Twins and tells Baela not to tell Rhaenyra until after he leaves. In the Riverlands, Daemon, alongside Willem Blackwood, confronts the Brackens on Caraxes and tells them to bend the knee to him. The Brackens maintain their loyalty to Aegon, however, and tell him they'd rather die by dragonfire than support his cause. Daemon decides not to kill them, though I'm sure that took a lot of restraint, and he explains to Willem that they're no use to them dead. They need to form an army, and he tasks Willem with fighting dirty to do so. Rhaena arrives at the Vale and speaks with Jane Eyre, who is clearly frustrated that Rhaenyra didn't send her a full-grown dragon. Despite her annoyance, Jane is still very hospitable to Rhaena and ends up surprising her when she shares her condolences for her grandmother. It's likely Rhaena had not yet heard about Rhaenys death. Back at Harrenhal, Daemon continues having strange visions, and this one is the most bizarre so far. We see him speak with a blonde woman who tells him he's a fearless dragon rider and talks him up. They begin having sex until he sees blood in the bed, and the woman is revealed to be a young version of Daemon's mother, Alyssa Targaryen. Well then, as he snaps out of it, he's at dinner with everyone, and Alys is staring at him. Daemon seems super out of it, but informs Simon of his plans, telling him that Willem will be bringing in the Brackens, and they're going to have to fix the castle up if they're going to host a big army. Simon explains that they don't have the money to do so, and he suggests that Daemon might ask Rhaenyra for some. Of course, Daemon refuses to do that, and in a step further to assert his dominance. He tells Simon to refer to him as his king. Simon pushes back, saying he's the king consort, but Daemon tells him the last part is unnecessary. The Greens have a small council meeting where the maester informs everyone that they don't know if Aegon will live, declaring, his fate lies with the gods. This means they're going to have to decide on a regent, and Alicent volunteers herself to fill in while her son is ill. The men reject this, however, and one suggests Aemond for the job. In front of her son, Alicent says Aemond is too young and lacks restraint. Ultimately, though, it doesn't take long for the council to vote for Aemond as the king's regent. Alicent is visibly upset as Aemond begins making decisions and giving out tasks, saying they will not be letting anyone in or out of King's Landing. We get another quick scene of Hugh Hammer and his family in this episode, as we see how badly the small folk are struggling at King's Landing. They don't have food or money, and his wife Kat wants them to leave. Hugh doesn't think they have anywhere to go, and is still holding on to the belief that Aegon will pay him. Kat is unconvinced. After the meeting, Alicent confronts Criston about his vote for Aemond and suggests that he only cares about her when they're in bed together. Criston pushes back, saying that they've now given the war to the dragons and she shouldn't be responsible for it. He believes he's sparing her, but she doesn't want to be spared. Hugh and his family, along with other small folk, attempt to leave King's Landing, but they're not allowed. It doesn't take long for people to become angry and scared, with the Gold Cloaks telling them that by the order of Prince Aemond, they must stay home. Jace arrives in the Riverlands and speaks with House Frey about the crossing, and they make their fears known. They might not be the biggest fans of Aegon, but they also don't underestimate vhagar's power. Jace offers them protection, but they're concerned that the Green's dragons are in different locations. They continue to negotiate, with the Freys wanting Harrenhal and Jace wanting their support for Rhaenyra along with the twins. Daemon stars in a special edition of Westeros Fixer Upper and takes it upon himself to start mending the castle, since they don't have enough money to get it done otherwise. He speaks with Alys, who looks at the wounds on his hands. Daemon's been hinting at wanting to take the Iron Throne for himself since he left Dragonstone, but here's when he really makes it known. He tells Alys that Rhaenyra's supporters will want a man as their leader, and he believes that when he takes King's Landing, Rhaenyra will have to get in line. Baela speaks with Corlys and tells him that Rhaenyra wants to appoint him her hand, but he's still, understandably, angry about Rhaenys death. He blames Rhaenyra, but he also isn't about to go support Aegon. Baela reminds him that Rhaenys volunteered to go to Rook's Rest, and she died with honor in Dragonfire. The only way she would want to go out. It's the same way Laena died, and Baela says it's how she'll die too. Corlys asks Baela to be his heir, but she rejects him. She doesn't belong at Driftmark. Rhaenyra decides to send one of her knights, Alfred, to Harrenhal, knowing they don't have an army without Daemon, but she can't get a hold of him. She asks Alfred to meet with Daemon and find out what his intentions are, realizing he might be following a claim of his own. When Alfred asks if she has a message for Daemon, Rhaenyra says that she wants to finish their last conversation. At Harrenhal, unhappy people from the Riverlands demand to speak with Daemon. Willem has been successful in getting to the Brackens, but not in a savory way. Daemon is told they will not raise their banners for a tyrant, proving his strategy has failed again. Sure, you can kidnap and kill as much as you want, but those people aren't going to follow you willingly. Daemon has a long way to understanding how to rule. Alinda arrives at King's Landing and lies her way inside, and she meets with Diana. What is Rhaenyra planning here? Corlys considers his new role as the Hand as he looks at the pin. Meanwhile, Aemond stares at the Iron Throne and is interrupted by Helena, who asks him, was it worth the price? Alicent visits Aegon in bed, and as she walks out of the room, Aegon mutters a quiet. The final scene of the episode is an exciting one, as Jacaerys returns to Dragonstone and speaks with Rhaenyra. She doesn't seem angry that he left without her permission, and she asks him what happened at the twins. Rhaenyra tells her son that she's proud of him, and she explains that she's also been frustrated that she has to stay in one place. Jace asks about Daemon, but Rhaenyra doesn't see him as an option to help them right now. She's adamant that she's going to have to go fight, knowing that Syrax is faster than vhagar, and they need more dragons, or rather, more dragon riders. Though they have Vermithor and Silverwing, they're basically useless at the moment with no one to ride them. In the Westerlands, Sir Jason Lannister is marching east from Castle Rock and is about to cross over into the Riverlands to confront Daemon at Harrenhal. Before he does so, he and his growing green army stop into the Golden Tooth, seat of House Lefford, a wealthy Westerlands family faithful to the Lannisters. The Lord of the Golden Tooth reluctantly agrees to temporarily garrison the Green Army and eyes its cages of actual lions nervously. Before he avails himself of the Golden Tooth's day spa facilities, Sir Jason sends a raven to King's Landing. The message instructs Aemond to meet him there on vhagar, so the Prince Regent can protect the Lannister army when they march on Harrenhal, where Daemon is still cooling his heels and tripping on goof juice. Cut to King's Landing, where Aemond predictably reacts to Sir Jason's demand by being hella outraged at it. His usual cool, sneering demeanor cracks and decays into the whiny fulminating of his brother Aegon. Aemond tells the council that he will reach out to the Triarchy. You'll recall them from Season 1. They're the 3 free cities that lie across the narrow sea from Westeros. It was the navies of the Triarchy that Daemon and Corlys battled for control of the Stepstones. The council doesn't love the idea. The Triarchy are mercenaries and not to be trusted. But Aemond thinks he's only being practical. After all, the Black's blockade of the Bay needs to be broken. Yes, the Lannisters are building an army, but they're still a long way away. And yes, the Lannisters and the Hightowers have fleets of ships, but it will take them months to arrive. Meanwhile, the Triarchy's navies are very near, and could set to work weakening the blockade immediately. We get a mention of the Greyjoys of the Iron Islands, but evidently they've not declared for either side just yet. Aemond tells Criston Cole to set out for Harrenhal immediately. His army will attack Daemon at Harrenhal from the east, the Lannister army from the west. Aemond keeps Alicent behind and wastes no time making his small council that much smaller by dismissing her from it. Alicent reaches out to cradle his face and lovingly stroke his scar. It's not clear whether this is just a cynical gambit she's busting out to convince him to let her stay, or if somehow the mother in her truly sees him and registers how the wounds of his childhood haven't healed. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's own council has once again gathered around the painted table. Corlys has accepted the position of Hand of the Queen without a fuss. She summons Sir Steffon Darklyn, leader of her Queensguard. Y'all remember him. He's the son of Sir Gunthor Darklyn, whose head Criston Cole lopped off at Duskendale back in episode 4. She tells him of her current plan. Let's call it Operation Have I Got a Guy for You, which consists of trying to match riders to the riderless dragons hanging on and around Dragonstone. She tells him she's been down to the Dragonstone Records Department in the basement of the library, poring over the microfiche, and she's learned that his grandmother's grandmother was a Targaryen. Her council scoffs at this and points out to her that she's grabbing at some pretty thin genetic straws. The noisiest dissenter, now that surly old Sir Alfred Broom has been sent away, is the excellently named Sir Bartimos Celtigar of Claw Isle. Rhaenyra then reads Sir Steffon a memo from Trish in Legal, informing him that attempting to bond with a dragon could result in injury or death, for which Rhaenyra Corp and its subsidiaries cannot be held responsible. He agrees. At the Dragondick, the Dragon Keepers summon the dragon Seasmoke. This was Laenor Valyrian's dragon. The blind date seems to be going well at first, but then something happens, maybe in their telepathic bond. Sir Steffon made a racist joke or treated the server rudely or told Seasmoke he really needs to read Jordan Peterson. Whatever the reason, no love connection gets made, and Seasmoke summarily smokes both Sir Steffon and an unnamed dragon keeper. Later, a preening Sir Bartimos attempts to serve Rhaenyra a steaming pot of told you so, but she slaps him for forgetting his place. Rhaenyra is brooding on the Dragonstone ramparts when Jacaerys joins her and tells her not to fret about Sir Steffon. You can't make a dragon rider without breaking a few knights, after all. Also, kudos for throwing hands at the old dude. Rhaenyra isn't ready to hear that. She's restless, she wants to fight, and is tired of everyone condescending to her. Jacaerys tells her that even if she led their army herself, she's not enough. They need Daemon and his dragon. At Harrenhal, Daemon dreams, or is haunted, or is tripping. The why doesn't matter, the what very much does. And the what is question is Daemon reliving the moment his brother King Viserys told him he'd named Rhaenyra as his heir, and angrily exiled Daemon to the Vale. He returns to reality to find himself threatening poor Sir Simon Strong, accusing him of causing his loony tunishness, and of being in league with the Hightowers, or Sir Larrys, or even Rhaenyra herself. And stop watching me, he shouts, resulting in a low-key hilarious reaction shot wherein Sir Simon busies himself inspecting Harrenhal's moldering, guano-covered floors, walls, and ceilings. He sets out to leave, but on the way to Mount Caraxes, he meets Ally's Rivers in the courtyard by Harrenhal's weirwood tree. Daemon lashes out, but Ally's doesn't rise to the bait and remains her cryptic, spooky-ooky self, though she adds some therapy speak to the mix this time, admonishing him about his anger issues, and how his desperate striving for the crown makes him less worthy of it. She goes so full-bore Dr. Melfi, in fact, that Daemon can't help but go Tony Soprano to match her. He asks for her advice on dealing with Dese Gagoot's riverlords. She tells him he needs House Tully to control the Riverlands. He reminds her that it's Lord Grover Tully still clings to life. She tells him to hang on a second, she's gonna get right on that. On Driftmark, Corlys Valyrian's ship, which has been getting repaired in dry dock all season long, is finally ready. He asks or orders Alan to be his first mate. Alan agrees, reluctantly. Later, he and his brother Adam bicker over their status as Corlys kids. Adam shaves his head so no one can see his platinum blonde hair and consider him a nepo baby, while Alan would be only too happy to get some love, emotional and fiduciary, from Papa Seasnake. In a tavern in King's Landing, Ulf is bellying up to a meager meal and belly-aching about it. Evidently it's been weeks since anyone's had anything but fish. A woman at the next table complains, a bit too loudly and clearly, that the small folk are starving while the royal family feasts on roasted meat. She's a Mysaria plant, and she's selling the part. Ulf seems fittingly and exploitably annoyed. Later, when he sees a cart of sheep being hauled to the dragon pit to keep Team Green's dragons fat and happy, or whatever passes for happy, to a dragon, his mood sours further. That night, a small fleet of boats bearing fresh produce and meats and cheeses sails onto the beach around King's Landing, bearing Rhaenyra's sigil. And just in time, at the now very small indeed small council, Larys warns of unrest in the city, which Aemond dismisses. He also rebuffs Larys' transparent bid to be named the King's Hand, and tells him to summon Otto Hightower back to King's Landing, so he can resume the title. Larys' expression makes it clear that Aemond has made himself a powerful, albeit slimy, enemy this day. The Grand Maester enters and announces that Aegon will recover. The small council looks worriedly at Aemond, who says, "What happy news?" He goes to a wheezing Aegon's bedside and checks to see how much of the battle the king remembers. Aegon, in an uncharacteristically smart move, pretends to recall nothing at all, earning himself another day. Alicent, meanwhile, is on the second stop of her whirlwind, seeing what it feels like to be an actual mother tour. She sits at Aegon's bedside. Grand Maester Orwyle enters and tells her that they don't know where her father Otto Hightower is, but not to worry over much, as the war may be preventing effective communication. The courtyard of the Red Keep, where Criston Cole and Alicent's brother Gwaine are preparing to head out for Harrenhal. She asks Gwaine about her youngest son Darren, who was sent away to Aldtown while still young. He's 16 now, he tells her, and smart and strong and kind. That last word brings her up short because it makes such a powerful and damning case for nurture over nature. Gwaine tries to reassure her that she's a good mother. It's just that she raised her other kids in the Red Keep, and that's why they're the way they are. To her credit, she doesn't for a moment believe this. Final stop, Helena's room. Helena's keeping what look like crickets in tiny cages. She comments that this one stopped singing, and yeah, I don't know what it means either. Alicent invites her daughter to join her in a trip outside the Red Keep, to the Grand Sept, so they can light candles for Aegon, among others. Hugh the blacksmith is stomping through the streets when he's surrounded by streams of people carrying the food that Rhaenyra's just DoorDashed to the city. He rips a grocery bag full of cabbages out of the arms of some poor schmo and takes it for himself. He heads home just as the excited crowd grows into a riot. A riot that, as it happens, surrounds the very same Grand Sept that Alicent and Helena are praying in. The Kingsguard attempt to escort them to safety, but their carriage is a considerable distance away, and lots of things go south as they make for it. The crowd hurls both seafood and insults at them. They get separated briefly, and when one hapless citizen grabs Alicent, her guard lops off the guy's arm. Eventually, they make it their carriage, a bit banged up, though the guard who did the arm chopping gets swarmed by the crowd and left for dead, as cries of "Long live Queen Rhaenyra" echo in the streets. The people know what side their bread is buttered on, not to mention who sent them the bread and butter. And cabbages. So many cabbages. In the Red Keep, Lord Larys sits at a suffering Aegon's bedside and delivers a nifty little "we're not so different, you and I" speech to Aegon's growing horror. Larys basically tells him that people will pity him and underestimate him, which he can use to his advantage. He also tells him that Aemond will try to kill him, something that Aegon has already figured out. Cut to what I hope will be the final leg of Daemon's long, strange Harrenhal acid trip. He's flashing back again, comforting Viserys as the king weeps over the body of his beloved first wife Emma. You remember Emma, don't you? From the very first episode of Season 1, the woman he told the Maesters to let die in childbirth so they could try to save the child, only to have both mother and child die. That Emma. Daemon awakes, and Esser Simon Strong informs him that Grover Tully has finally died, despite the best efforts of their healer, Alys Strong. Daemon smiles, realizing that Alys did in fact get right on that. In the Vale, Rhaena complains about her lot in life to young Joffrey as they wander the hillside. She tells him she's resigned to being his and his half-brother's babysitter, even though she wanted something more. Just then they find a burnt patch of grass littered with sheep bones, a telltale sign of a dragon. She confronts Lady Jane about it, who admits that there have been sightings of a large and formidable wild dragon recently. She also informs Rhaena that Prince of Pentos has agreed to host Lil Joffrey, Lil Viserys, and Lil Aegon the baby, along with Rhaena herself to protect them during the war. But Rhaena, of course, being dragonless herself, is focused on that first part. On Driftmark, Adam is minding his own business doing random fisherman stuff when sea smoke buzzes him and all the other folks on the beach. Adam runs into the trees. Sea Smoke is his own beast, and he is determined. He finds Adam and stares him down. Adam stares back. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra and Mysaria, how to put this? They share a romantic embrace. They rent a figurative U-Haul. They bring each other to the potluck, as it were. The moment is interrupted when Rhaenyra is informed that Sea Smoke has found a rider. She assumes it must be a Team Green rider, and decides she's had enough of being coddled and protected. She mounts her dragon Syrax and takes to the sky. The penultimate episode of House of the Dragon Season 2 begins with Rhaenyra and Adam of Hull facing off on the beach, with their dragons scratching and snarling behind them. In case Adam was not aware, Rhaenyra informs him she's the queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and by the way, that dragon he's been riding around on is her property. Adam bends the knee, which takes Rhaenyra a bit by surprise. "You kneel quickly for a man so suddenly elevated," she says. He admits he's been loyally serving House Velaryon as a shipwright, but if the gods call me to greater things, who am I to refuse them? Still hung up on the blood of the dragon thing, Rhaenyra wants to know of his parentage, but he leaves out the fact that her former father-in-law and current hand, Corlys Velaryon, is his father. As they fly back to Dragonstone, Jace watches their arrival. Though the Dragonseed plot was his idea, he's none too pleased by this turn of events. Neither is Lord Bartimos, who huffs that the lowborn Corlys, with all that dragon blood pumping in his veins, pretends he has nothing to do with this whole incident, giving his son a well done, and nothing more when he visits him in the very nice digs he now gets as a dragon rider. In a meeting with Rhaenyra, Mysaria suggests she's been looking for dragon riders in the wrong places, and perhaps should be looking under the sheets and in the workhouse. Just as Robert Baratheon would later litter King's Landing with his own bastards, like the rowing extraordinaire and future Lord of Storm's End, Gendry Rivers. There are loads of silver-haired Targaryen progeny among the small folk. She knows many of them. When Rhaenyra asks that the Highborn have sworn ancient fealty to her house, and it would be better to find riders among them, Mysaria counters that her half-brothers are both Highborn and trying to steal her throne. Good point, Rhaenyra concedes. Well then, let us raise an army of bastards. Being bastard-born, Jace is no fool for what this whole plan means for his claim to the throne and is quite put out. His paternal parentage can be doubted, but he can argue for his legitimacy as heir because he has a dragon. But if a bunch of bastard-born Targaryen are running around with dragons, that throws the whole system by which they rule into chaos. Rhaenyra believes this is the only way they can end the war quickly and without bloodshed, but Jace wants her to put him before the kingdom. It's a choice she just cannot make. House Tully arrives at Harrenhal with Lord Oscar Tully as its new head. If Daemon thought he could bully the young lad into doing his bidding because Oscar is a teenager, he soon finds he has not a fish but a shark in his midst. Displaying the type of moxie that would make Lyanna Mormont proud, Oscar outmaneuvers Daemon in a meeting with the Riverlords, who hate Daemon and Lord Blackwood for their crimes against the innocent and demand justice. Proving himself worthy of his new title, Oscar sentences Lord Blackwood to die for his crimes, but makes Daemon dispense his justice. Blackwood claims he only did what he did on Daemon's orders, but Oscar coolly says, "You did it because you wanted to." Daemon knows that the only way to get Oscar's army is to carry out his sentence, so he reluctantly brings Darksister down on Willem's head. Later, when Daemon has another vision of his brother Viserys, he's decrepit and holding his crown in sorrow. Viserys admits he never wanted to rule and that the crown crushes whoever wears it. He holds it out to Daemon and asks, "Do you want it still?" Daemon doesn't look so sure. It's a somewhat quiet week on Team Black, as Larys keeps news of Seasmoke's new rider to himself to spite Aemond, who is sending members of the Kingsguard to the Wall for their failure in riot. Full of plots, Larys has demanded that Grandmaster Orwyle get the disfigured Aegon up and out of bed to practice walking. Still racked with pain, Aegon screams as he tries, but when Orwyle tells Larys the king needs to rest, Larys says it will be long before he may rest again. After Orwyle tends to Alicent's knife wound, the Dowager Queen reflects on the fact that she's spent her whole life sacrificing for the good of the kingdom, only to be met with a blade during the riot. Questioning the point of her life, she decides it's time she had a vacation and goes camping in the nearby woods. With Criston gone, she brings along only her sworn protector, Lord Rickard Thorne, who sets up their tents and mines camp while quietly thinking the queen has lost her mind. As Alicent rides and swims alone, she enjoys a freedom she's never had before, and might not return to her place at court as a result. Rhaenyra might have one new dragon rider in Adam, but she still has dragons to spare. With Mysaria's knowledge of the lowborn Targaryens of Flea Bottom, they send Alan of Hull, who, unlike his brother, wants to remain of salt and sea, to King's Landing with the message that Rhaenyra seeks dragon riders of Targaryen blood, lowborn or not. The message makes it to both Ulf the White and Hugh Hammer, who admits to his wife that his mother was a Targaryen-born prostitute. Along with many silver-haired men and women, Hugh and Ulf board the boat to Dragonstone. Rhaenyra watches as they enter the castle. Though the Dragon Keepers helped with Sir Darkland's attempt to ride Seasmoke, this collection of lowborn Targaryens is too much for them. They tell Rhaenyra in Valryon that they will take no part in this folly, dressed in one of the most impressive red gowns she owns. Rhaenyra comes before her little-known relatives and warns them of the dangers that they face. She tells them of the mighty Vermithor, known as the Bronze Fury, second only to vhagar in size and the most fierce dragon that lives. With a new dragon rider, peace will be restored. Suffering will end. While Jace is notably absent, the ever-loyal Baela is by Rhaenyra's side as they enter the Dragonmont with all the potential dragon seeds. Rhaenyra calls to Vermithor, and the great beast eventually emerges from the darkness. He allows her to stroke her nose as she urges him, "Be calm," in Valyrian. A rather misbegotten dragonseed steps forward, and Rhaenyra takes her leave to watch from the balcony above, saying, "It must be the dragon who speaks." But when Vermithor speaks, he decides it's dinner time and roasted dragon seeds are on the menu. The Bronze Fury attacks with flame and teeth, incinerating and eating all who aren't quick enough to escape him. Ulf gets knocked off the platform but survives by running off into the dragon caverns. Rhaenyra watches, transfixed from above, as Vermithor unleashes terror upon his potential riders. But she doesn't urge any of them to safety. She knows if Vermithor is to be claimed, one of these dragon seeds will have to prove themselves worthy of it. Once the fiery chaos is unleashed, Hugh runs for his life, hiding behind a rock with another terrified woman, when the woman tries to make a run for it and comes face to face with the raging dragon. Hugh bravely distracts Vermithor so she can escape. Before the dragon decides to attack, he sizes Hugh up. As the man bellows, "Come on," at him, he must sense a true Targaryen warrior standing before him. As Rhaenyra watches from above, Vermithor kneels and Hugh smiles. The Bronze Fury is no more riderless. With a torch in hand, Ulf runs through the muck of the caverns, stumbling as he searches for an exit, as he crushes what looks like a dragon egg beneath his feet. He realizes he has stumbled into a dragon's lair. Silverwing emerges from the shadows, pushing a terrorized Ulf down. He surrenders to her, hands up as he waits to be incinerated with his eyes closed. When no dragonfire comes, he opens his eyes to see the mighty dragon kneeling to him. He laughs in relief and at his good fortune. Back in King's Landing, Aemond is reigning over the small council as a commotion grows outside, with the shouts of "dragon" growing louder in his ears. A dragon has taken flight over the Red Keep. As Aemond rushes to Mount vhagar, we see Ulf is taking Silverwing out for a spin. Aemond follows a laughing Ulf all the way to Dragonstone before pulling back once he gets sight of the castle. "Flee vhagar," Aemond commands as he yanks frantically on his dragon's bridle. As the camera draws closer, we see what panicked Aemond. It's Rhaenyra standing with Syrax, Vermithor, and Silverwing roaring at her command. When the Green's new Prince Regent Aemond suggested an alliance with the Triarchy of the Free Cities, everyone balked at the idea. Yet here, the Master of Ships Tyland Lannister is in Essos, having traveled there to negotiate said partnership on the Crown's behalf. Things aren't going all that well, especially when the leaders of the Triarchy want the one thing Tyland can't promise them: gold. Breaking the blockade that Corlys Valerian's ships are currently enforcing would only benefit everyone, Tyland insists, but the Triarchy won't budge. Since there's no real incentive for them to assist in this fight, not until one of them suggests they be given control of the Stepstones as payment. Besides, all the Triarchy promises to do is enforce an itty-bitty tax on anyone who happens to be passing through that island chain. Tyland may be making a decision he'll regret by agreeing to hand over the Stepstones in exchange for the Triarchy's armada of ships, but these pirates, as the Master of Ships scornfully labels them, are pretty good negotiators. Before Tyland can return to Westeros with his new fleet, however, he has to meet the approval of their commander, Admiral Lohar, and is more than taken aback by the revelation that said admiral, emerging from the back corner of the room, happens to be a woman. Lohar gives him an appraising look before issuing a challenge of her own. She won't sail with a man who can't beat her in some good old-fashioned mud wrestling. It's about as sloppy and undignified and distanced from Westeros as Tyland has ever been, and initially it looks like Lohar is going to win handily, until the Master of Ships gets in a good punch or two, which is apparently enough to make Lohar reconsider her opinion of him being a soft noble. She'll lead her fleet of ships into battle on the Green's behalf, but first, she has one more request for Tyland at the feast later that night: impregnate all of her wives first. Back in Westeros, Aemond taken vhagar to sharp point and immolated the entire town, people and all. It's one of the most disturbing decisions Aemond's ever made, but it proves particularly alarming to King's Landing's Master of Whisperers, Larys Strong, who immediately seeks an audience with a still recovering Aegon to inform him of the news. Larys also voices a suggestion of his own to the king: flee the city now while Aemond is gone, because there's no telling what he might be capable of once he returns, including picking up where he left off at Rook's Rest and delivering the killing blow. Aegon's first instinct is to resist rather than run and have Aemond thrown in prison by the time his brother comes back. But that doesn't mean he'll be any more prepared to face Rhaenyra and her 7 dragons with vhagar out of the picture. It's here that we learn Aegon's dragon, Sunfire, didn't survive the battle at Rook's Rest, and Aegon himself is so disfigured that certain parts no longer work the way they used to. Yet Larys appeals to the part of Aegon that wants to be beloved, spinning a story of someone who can return once his enemy's forces are too exhausted to go on, and be hailed by his people as a king risen from the ashes. The next time we see Aegon in this episode, he's taken Larry's counsel to heart, fleeing King's Landing alongside his Master of Whisperers in a covered wagon while others ready themselves for battle. The possibility of flight over fight is also being weighed by Alicent, who, having returned to the city from her extended nature walk, is thinking over the best way to ensure her and her daughter's safety. Such an absence won't go unnoticed, especially because Aemond is already seeking out his sister, intending to convince her to join the battle with her dragon, Dreamfire. But Helaena is not the dragon rider her brothers are, as Rhaenyra has astutely noted already, and Aemond's desperate attempt to recruit her is met with refusal not only from Helaena, but Alicent, who has finally reached the threshold of how much she's willing to bear from her youngest son. If anyone can see the extent to which Aemond's recent actions have been defined by his unchecked fury, it's Alicent, but she refuses to let his basest instincts corrupt his sister in the process. Aemond leaves the room without securing a second dragon for his cause, and Alicent immediately seeks her own assistance from Grand Maester Orwyle, in the hopes of securing passage to parts unknown to us. On the road to Harrenhal, Sir Criston Cole has reached his emotional crisis point, confronted by Alicent's brother Gwaine for having one of the Dowager Queen's handkerchiefs in his possession. Criston doesn't defend his actions or lie about their affair, but what gets Gwaine to ultimately lower his sword is Criston's admission that he considers Alicent his savior in more ways than one. It's clear that the events of Rook's Rest have left a mark on the Lord Commander that's beyond repair, one that's led him to some personal reflection about the corruption of men and whether honor may actually be a myth. Criston admits he once believed himself to be a defender of the righteous, dispensing justice on everyone else, but witnessing the deaths of hundreds, maybe even thousands. To the punishing spread of dragonfire has changed his perspective. The dragons dance, and men are like dust under their feet. At this stage, Criston muses dying may very well be more of a relief than anything else. It's an observation that leaves Gwaine himself too stunned to reply at all. Helaena had been the one to readily identify her younger brother as the one responsible for Aegon's debilitating injuries before, courtesy of her visions. And it's already been pointed out multiple times that she has no taste for burning anyone. However, Aemond's quiet appeal is more pleading now. And there's even a tear in the Prince Regent's eye, though whether it's from rage or vulnerability is unclear, when Helaena brings up Aemond's role in Aegon's trauma again. She also issues what seems to be a prophecy of her own. Aegon will be king again. He's yet to see victory. He sits on a wooden throne, and you'll be dead. You were swallowed up in the god's eye, and you were never seen again. When Aemond threatens to have Helaena killed for her words, the queen remains resolute, pointing out that her death wouldn't change the course of the events she's seen. At Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's brand new dragon riders are proving a bitter pill to swallow for Jacaerys, who's instantly turned off by Ulf the White's poor manners. The man's even got his feet up on the painted table of all places. By contrast, Hugh the Hammer attempts to make amends for his compatriot's behavior, pointing out that Ulf doesn't know how to act around nobility because he's never had any experience at court. But Ulf is also single-handedly voicing many of Jace's worst fears by pointing out that they're both dragon riders now, cut from the same cloth. Given that exchange between Jace and his mother last week, and the prince's lingering concerns about whether any of these new additions to their cause could challenge for the throne someday, there's no love lost between Jace and any of these men, even if they have their own dragons now. When Baela finds him sulking later, she issues a stern pep talk that seems to work, "Get up and take your place by your mother's side." It's a conversation that couldn't have happened a moment too soon. As Rhaenyra reveals her plan of attack to her dragon riders over dinner that night, they must ride in 2 days' time to subdue the cities and armies of Oldtown and Lannisport, which means a crash course in learning Valyrian commands and being fitted with armor. Meanwhile, at Harrenhal, Rhaenyra's emissary from the small council, Sir Alfred Broom, has finally arrived to shadow Daemon. The king consort seems less than pleased to have a babysitter following him around, but once the two men are in private in the Godswood, Sir Alfred offers to shift his loyalties to Daemon and back his claim to the crown instead. Admittedly, the Daemon of only a few weeks ago would have greedily snatched up another bannerman. But the Daemon who regards Sir Alfred now is confident in calling him out as a turncloak, rejecting the implication that he should serve as the king Westeros needs. Their conversation doesn't go unnoticed by Harrenhal's castellan, Sir Simon Strong, who hastily sends off a raven to Rhaenyra, expressing his concerns about subterfuge and betrayal. Whatever the contents of the letter are, they're worrisome enough that Rhaenyra instantly saddles up Syrax and flies to Harrenhal alongside Adam and Seasmoke to discover, once and for all, what Daemon's true intentions are. Before Rhaenyra reaches Harrenhal, however, Daemon has his biggest vision of all, and it comes courtesy of accompanying Alys Rivers to the Godswood in the dead of night. Touching the heart tree, which is already leaking a red sap that bears a disturbing resemblance to blood, plunges him into a waking dream of the future that completely changes his perspective on events. Not only do we, alongside Daemon, witness glimpses of what the Dance of the Dragons may culminate in, but we see other significant figures, including the Night King beyond the wall, and a young Daenerys Targaryen surrounded by her 3 newly hatched dragons from the Season 1 finale of Game of Thrones. It's a sequence that immediately gives Daemon new context for his previous arguments with Rhaenyra about the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, but also seems to change him for the better. When he first arrived at Harrenhal, as Alys observes, he was a closed fist who wished to bend the world to his will. Now, Daemon's willingness to submit himself to these glimpses of past, present, and future has given him an even deeper insight into the future than Rhaenyra could claim. And he finally envisions his wife atop the Iron Throne, rather than Viserys or himself. Thus, when Rhaenyra descends on Harrenhal, Sir Simon Strong is there to meet her, ushering the queen in to see Daemon at once. As the two spouses come face to face for the first time since Daemon left Dragonstone, the mood is tense, to say the least. And it doesn't lighten even when they slip into their old habit of speaking to each other in High Valyrian. But Daemon insists that he understands what's truly coming, the winter beyond the war itself, and who will be called to lead them. Therefore, in front of all the men he has won to their side, Daemon bends the knee to Rhaenyra, a move that is possibly the hottest thing he has done in this series to date, along with a promise of loyalty. "I am meant to serve you, and all of these with me, until death or the end of our story." This increase in forces does bode well for Rhaenyra's ability to take back her throne, but it also weighs heavily on the queen when she reflects privately on what must transpire once back at Dragonstone with Mysaria. Even if she prevails and returns the realm to peace, who will pay the ultimate price in the end? Alicent met Rhaenyra and asserts her own plan to flee with Helaena and Jaehaera. Rhaenyra points out that history may not remember her kindly. She'll be labeled a villain, a cold queen, grasping for power and then defeated. Alicent doesn't care what anyone thinks of her after this, now that she's finally choosing for herself. But she makes one last plea of her own, echoing Aemond's earlier in the episode, inviting Rhaenyra to come with her. The Black Queen refuses, acknowledging that her part in all of this was decided for her long ago, as she bids Alicent to leave. And it feels an awful lot like these two women, who once deeply loved each other, are parting ways for good. As Rhaenyra's dragon riders begin suiting up for battle, we follow each of the major players' progression on the board. Tylan, Lohar, and the Triarchy advancing from Essos, while Criston, Gwaine, and Prince Daeron on his dragon Tessarion, plus their men, continue their trek to Harrenhal.